Today we're unpacking an ancient philosophy, one that was a huge deal in Greece and Rome for nearly 500 years, and you're going to see why it's maybe more relevant now than ever before.
You ever feel that way? Just adrift in a sea of chaos? Yeah, you're not alone. And what's wild is that there's an entire philosophy built for exactly that feeling. And no, it's not about just, thinking positive or someone telling you to cheer up.
So what if I told you there was an ancient operating system for your mind? Seriously, one that's been battle-tested for centuries, designed specifically for resilience. We're going to dive into Stoicism, but not as some boring, dusty old philosophy. We're talking about a practical toolkit for surviving and even thriving in the modern world.
All right, so where does this all start? Well, picture this. It's around 300 BCE. And our story doesn't begin with some stereotypical philosopher in a toga. Nope, it starts with a super-rich merchant named Zeno of Citium, who loses everything. I mean everything, in a single catastrophic shipwreck.
So there he is, stranded in Athens, totally broke. He wanders into a bookshop, picks up the writings of Socrates, and bam! His life changes forever. He starts teaching, not in some fancy academy, but out in public, on a painted porch called the Stoa Poikiae. And the Stoa, is literally where the name Stoicism comes from. Later on, a guy named Chrysippus really organized it all into the full-blown philosophy we know today.
This is where it gets really interesting. The Stoics had this core belief that the universe isn't just random chaos. They saw it as this huge, interconnected system that runs on a kind of rational logic, a web of cause and effect. They called this logos. You can think of it like the universe's source code or its natural law. It's the reason that governs everything.
Okay, so if the universe has this rational order, what does that mean for us? Well, this idea leads directly to what is maybe the most powerful, most practical tool in the entire Stoic toolkit, the dichotomy of control.
And it's actually super simple, but so profound. The Stoics basically said, hey, almost all of our anxiety, our frustration, our suffering, it comes from one simple mistake, trying to control things we can't control. Just look at this breakdown. You can't control the economy, the weather, what other people think about you, but you have total control over how you judge those things, the intentions you set, and most importantly, how you choose to act in response.
The philosopher Epictetus, who, by the way, was born a slave and became one of the most respected teachers in the Roman Empire, he just nailed it. He said, it's not about what happens to you, it's about how you react. That's the whole game. The stuff that happens, that's external. Your reaction, that's internal. And that is where your true power, your true freedom is found.
So does this stuff actually work under pressure, like real pressure? Well, let's look at the ultimate case study. The most powerful man in the world at the time, the Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. For 19 years, he was at the helm of the Roman Empire, dealing with just unimaginable stress every single day.
I mean, think about it. He had constant wars on the borders, a devastating plague that killed millions, the insane temptation that comes with having absolute power, not to mention betrayal, and just the crushing loneliness of being the guy in charge. You know that saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely? Well, Marcus Aurelius was the exception, and his secret weapon, it was Stoicism.
And we know this because he kept a private journal. It was never meant to be published, but we now call it meditations. It's basically him talking to himself, reminding himself over and over again, you have power over your mind, not outside events. He was literally building himself an inner fortress of calm while the world outside was in chaos.
Okay, so that's the theory. But how do we actually use this stuff in our own lives? Well, Stoicism is all about practice. It's a toolkit for living. And that toolkit is built on a foundation of 4 key virtues.
They are wisdom, which is about seeing the world clearly and calmly; justice, which is about treating other people right; courage, which is about facing challenges head-on; and temperance, or moderation, which is all about self-control. These aren't just, nice ideas. For a Stoic, they're the pillars of a good life. They're the compass that guides every single action you take.
All right, next tool. This one sounds a little dark at first, but stick with me. It's Memento Mori. Remember you will die. Marcus Aurelius put it bluntly, you could leave life right now. Whoa. But the point isn't to be depressed. It's the exact opposite. It's about using that reality to create urgency and clarity. If this was your last day, what would you do? How would you treat people? It cuts through all the nonsense.
Okay, and then there's Amor Fati. This one is a game changer.
It means a love of fate. The idea here is to not just tolerate what happens to you, but to embrace it, to love it, the good, the bad, all of it. The Stoics use the analogy of a fire. A great fire takes everything you throw at it, good wood, bad wood, trash, and turns it all into fuel, making the fire burn even brighter. Every event, every setback becomes fuel for you.
And that leads us perfectly into maybe the most famous Stoic idea of all. The obstacle is the way. When you hit a roadblock, your first instinct is probably to get frustrated, right? But a Stoic flips that on its head. They see that obstacle not as a problem, but as an opportunity. An opportunity to practice patience, or creativity, or courage. The thing that's blocking you actually becomes the path forward.
So, where does all this lead? What's the end goal? It all comes down to this core and kind of radical idea. The Stoics said that external things, money, fame, even your own health, are ultimately indifferent. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't care about being healthy. They'd call health a preferred indifferent. But what it means is that those things have no bearing on your moral character. They can't make you a good or a bad person. The only thing that is truly good is virtue itself.
Centuries later, the American philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson just captured this perfectly. Greatness is the perception that virtue is enough. Think about that. The reward for doing the right thing isn't some prize you get at the end. The reward is doing the right thing. That's it. That's the whole point.
And so that really leaves us with a pretty challenging question, doesn't it? Stoicism asks us to find our strength, our peace, our purpose, not by trying to bend the world to our will, but by mastering ourselves, by mastering our own minds. So the final question it poses to you and to me is this: is virtue enough for you?